together and feel alright. Let a man pass all his dirty remarks. There is one question I'd really love to ask. Now, is there a place for those hopeless sinners who would hurt all mankind just to save his own? Believe me, one love. What about the one heart? And what about the let's get together and feel alright? I'm pleading to mankind. One heart. Whoa. Giving thanks and praise to the Lord, and I will feel alright. Say now, let's get together and feel alright. One more thing. Let's get together to fight this holy Armageddon. So when the man comes, there will be no doom. And pity on those whose chances rose thinner. There ain't no hiding place from the Father of creation. Say it. One love, one heart. Let's get together and feel alright. One love, oh my cry. One heart, giving thanks and praise to the Lord, and I will feel alright. Say giving thanks and praise to the Lord, and I will feel alright. Say it, let's come and get together and feel alright. Good evening, everyone. My name is Levinsky Jasmine. I'm honored today to present this event. I'm the founder of the group Racial Justice for Black Lives and one of the members of the steering committee. Racial Justice for Black Lives is committed to bring the community together and foster changes that make us more inclusive, equitable, and just. So we're welcoming everyone to the event. We'll have an amazing time together. And let me tell you, today is the beginning of many conversations we'll have on the subject of racial justice and equity with a focus on Black lives. If you are watching the event now or you'll be watching it later, you are invited to check out our Facebook group, Racial Justice for Black Lives, for an ongoing conversation. During our time here, we'll enjoy some, amazing pieces of music and some great inspirational, motivational speakers. So I can't wait to hear from all of you guys. Thank you, everyone, for accepting the invite to be part of the event. Remember, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. So ask yourself, where do you stand? Well, we set some ground rules to ensure that everyone feels welcome and accepted. Please be reminded that our event is kids friendly. Don't use any inappropriate language. We want to make sure the event feels as close as an in-person event. Therefore, you are invited to clap your hands after every speech and song. Our event manager will unmute and mute everyone before and after each presentation. In the end, we'll have a Q&A. If you are watching on Zoom, please raise your hands using the participant display option. You'll be unmuted when it's your time to ask your question. We'll also be able to respond to some of the questions from the Facebook and Zoom chat. Be aware of that. Thank you everyone for collaborating with us. To begin the program, I am honored, blessed to introduce our first speaker, Lila Amashandrom, who will present the history of our organization. Lila in addressing health inequities. Lila is a force to be reckoned with in spite of her age. She is responsible, passionate, courageous, and loud.
Would pick some of these yellow leaves, or maybe they'd be or yellow apples.
Can you clap?
Yeah, you can clap.
Now, is this still the garage, or is this the house and the garage?
We need to.
I just wanted to briefly introduce kind of the history of our group. In the wake of George Floyd's murder and countless other Black individuals in America being treated poorly, Levinsky drove home from the town election polls to pick up his 5-year-old son, Jeremiah, so they could protest. They stood at Kelly's Corner with signs demanding that their lives be taken seriously and valued. Levinsky considered going to the protest in Boston, but thought that he would stay in town just in case other families couldn't make it there, but still wanted to participate. Other community members also took note and wanted to show support. After that first standout, Levinsky created a Facebook group and an event which he shared with locals. On the second evening, there were more than 200 people. By the third day, people were lined up, and even members of other communities were joining. This momentum led to a gathering on June 3rd. 500 people lined the sidewalks surrounding Kelly's Corner with signs calling for justice, safety, and equity for Black folks in the United States. At the second protest I attended, Jeremiah ran over to me, and without introducing himself, he excitedly said, "Hi friend, let's race." Later on, Levinsky posted on the Racial Justice for Black Lives Facebook page, asking for volunteers to join committees. I volunteered to be on the communication committee, hoping to channel my frustration with blatant and rampant racism into productivity. After my first meeting, I was hooked. The passion and drive that Levinsky and other members had was infectious, and I couldn't help but feel hopeful about the future, which was a drastic change from the anger and sense of hopelessness I'd previously been carrying. Levinsky and other members welcomed me with open arms. We now have a steering committee with a variety of people who are all committed to doing the work necessary for change. The research and policy group, comprised of passionate and hardworking women, have blown us away by how quickly they can pull up relevant data. We have a design team that created our Facebook group cover photo and a variety of options for our group logo. Our event management team has put hours and hours of work into this event. A couple of social workers have joined to help facilitate a support group, as we recognize that this work can be draining. And lastly, we have the communication committee, and I am the only member so far. Our group is committed to raising awareness of racism, injustice, and violence against Black lives, and to advocating boldly for actions leading towards systemic change. We hope to create a society that is equitable and just, in which every Black person has the right to economic, health, and environmental security, a meaningful political voice, and a sense of belonging in the community. By working together to create Black joy, we all benefit, and we build a community of mutual respect, togetherness, and love. My interaction with Jeremiah, when he asked me to play with him, is representative of my journey as part of this group. There was no trial period. Since day one, my ideas were welcomed, I was supported, and I was encouraged to think about things in different ways. I'm so grateful to Levinsky and all the people I've met through this group. And lastly, thank you to everyone for allowing me to post the event flyer in every single Facebook group I'm part of. Thank you.
Wait, there's a tornado outside.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Lila. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah. Lila, I know your parents are very proud of you, and all right, ladies and gentlemen, we are very grateful to have Acton, Ladies and gentlemen, we are very grateful to have Acton, Ladies and gentlemen, we are very grateful to have Acton, Ladies and gentlemen, we are very grateful to have Acton, Ladies and gentlemen, we are very grateful to have Acton, Ladies and gentlemen, we are very grateful to have um, hometown band. The Acton Music Project for our first performance today. They provide free concert to many local communities. Please join me in welcoming Peter, Joe, Jill, Andrew, Craig, and Chris in their two performance.
What should we do next? This is the Lower East Side. It's beautiful.
It's not windy.
Thank you, Levinsky. We are thrilled to be here. We're the Acton Music Project. We're going to play two songs for you. Here Comes the Sun and Taking It to the Streets. Hit it, Andy.
Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, and I say it's alright. Little darling, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, and I say it's alright. Little darling, the smiles returning to their faces. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, and I say it's alright. Sun, 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 here it comes. 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 Sun, sun, sun. Little darling, I feel the ice is slowly melting. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been clear. Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, and I say it's alright. It's alright.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You don't know me, but I'm your brother. I was raised here in this living hell. You don't know my kind in your world. Fairly soon time will tell. You tell me the things you're gonna do for me. I ain't blind, but I don't like what I see of me. Taking it to the street. No more need for running. Yeah, yeah. Take this message to my brother. the streets. Taking it to the streets. We can discuss it further. Taking it to the streets. Yeah, yeah. Taking it to the streets. Taking it to the streets. Taking it to the streets. No more need for running. No more need for hiding.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That was great. Yeah, thank you
What'd you say?
and the Acton Music Project for performing for us today. Truly believe it's time for the sun to bright on all of us in America. Either you were born in America or you came from another country. We truly believe the sun should bright on everybody. Let's give a round of applause to Acton Music Project.
I can write that.
Is a fired up young high schooler,
If on this side, you can't see.
Olivia Bispam. Olivia is an incoming senior at Acton Boxbow Regional High School. And her future plans include working with the kids to help them feel as comfortable as possible in their school environment. Olivia gave a powerful speech at the police station on June 4th after our second march from Kelly's Corner to the Acton Police Department. Olivia, we are so delighted to have you as a speaker again today. Let's welcome Olivia.
I'm very excited to be here. I really appreciate everybody coming. So to start off, again, my name is Olivia Bispam. I'm an incoming senior at Acton Boxford Regional High School. A little bit about me, I moved to Acton in 4th grade from Medford, Massachusetts. I then soon realized how different the environment was in both locations. How my classmates viewed my beautiful summer cornrows as something weird and disgraceful, but see their faces light up when I walk into school with my hair straightened. How I looked around in my classroom and there was no one who looked like me. Little did 4th grade Olivia know that as she would grow up and go through elementary school, middle school, and high school, things wouldn't change. How in high school, racial slurs would just be thrown around like they had no impact, or that my own school administration wouldn't care as much as they should about racial issues. Sitting there with my friends at lunch and hearing stories about their white English teacher saying that N-word when reading their class book. The most interesting thing about that for me was seeing their faces and body language when telling me what happened. Like it was no big deal and it was funny in their eyes that would even occur. Well, it's not only a big deal to them because it doesn't affect them. And that's when you feel the most alone. When not only do you know that nobody is here to support you, but that you have no allies. Surrounded by people who would never get or try to even understand what it's like to be a Black person here. Throughout my junior year, I tried to involve myself in as many anti-bias and other racial injustice programs as possible, to not only expand my knowledge, but to be able to educate others as well. One of my main goals was to educate myself enough to feel confident to confront someone for a racist comment in class or in school in general. I always felt so self-conscious and scared to just have a conversation with someone who may or may not have been saying something racist intentionally. These programs that I involved myself in helped me learn different biases that I didn't even know existed. One of the biggest things that resonated with me was implicit bias. Implicit bias is when people can act on the bias of prejudice and stereotypes without intending to do it. It was very important for me to learn and understand how everyone has bias. We just have to be aware of it and educate ourselves to not hurt others with it. How important it is when someone has different views or is demonstrating a bias to just have a conversation with them to see where they're coming from. To teach them the things that I was so lucky to learn to eventually change their views on things for the better. Because at the end of the day, everyone has bias in them, whether you like it or not. For me, sophomore year, I felt the most alone. I didn't know how to act or how to dress because being myself wasn't enough properly to fit in. Having my own friends call me an Oreo or an other microaggression that I laughed off in person, but questioned myself as a person later on at night. Overthinking my own personality because if I was too loud, I was called the loud black girl. If I was too soft-spoken, I was too shy and not pushing myself hard enough. Although other people's racism shouldn't have made me feel bad or make you feel like less of a person. It always stood out to me when I had conversations with my friends about racism and things such as on how uncomfortable they were talking about these things, specifically the Black Lives Matter movement. But during this time and everything that has been going on in the world, we need to be vulnerable and open to feel comfortable, because just imagine what it's like being on the receiving end of it. Something else that stood out to me is how some people support movements like All Lives Matter and etc. because they simply don't understand what it actually means. How the phrase All Lives Matter seems so harmless because they have not educated themselves enough to truly understand what that stands for. But they'll let their ignorance and lack of empathy learn to hurt Black lives. People aren't able to get out of their own privileged perspective and just empathize. Because these small occurrences just add to the bigger problem in the long run. It all comes down to the fact that America loves Black culture, but not as much as they love Black lives. To see some of my favorite artists and role models do something and have a white person repeat it and gets all the recognition and glamorized. Like Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr., Muhammad Ali, Black people have been and will continue to make history and change the world for the better. I love my melanin and my intricate beauty, summer cornrows, and that is something that will never change. I think it is insane that I have to say this, but Black lives matter. My life, my family lives, and all Black lives need to matter. Racism should not be a debate.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Olivia, for sharing. That was one of the reasons I decided to take Jeremiah to go to Kelly's Corner, because I believe my life matters, his life matters, my life matters, his life matters, and all Black lives matter. So we'll stand by you, with you, and with all Black people in general. To proceed, we have another speaker, Girlie Adrian. Girlie Adrian is the first Black Haitian American female city councilor at large for the city of Everett. Girlie is compassionate about people and passionate about service. Girlie knows that fighting for fairness means ensuring individuals and families have access to the resources they need to have a better life. Girlie wants to continue to fight to improve education, economic development, and quality of life for the people of Everett. Girlie, thank you for your tireless work in the city of Everett. We can't thank you enough for accepting to speak with us today. Let's welcome Girlie.
Everyone. Okay. Hello, everyone. So thank you all for allowing me to be here and talk about, what is racial justice, and in my role as, the first Black woman city councilor in my hometown, the city of Everett. And, what does that work look like, and sort of the challenges as being the only Black councilor have been, because it's only been seven months now. And so when Levinsky asked me about joining and sort of partaking in this, I really wanted to just highlight for many people, people think that politicians have it super easy in their roles. And something that I have realized is that this work is really, really hard. Some of the work that I'm trying to do is make sure there's equity in terms of opportunities for everyone. And it is tough. Like, there are days when I'm just like, wow, I thought this would be a lot easier. And so I'm just going to give a little bit about myself and then the work and how I want to challenge everybody who is watching, who is listening, and how they can support Black politicians like me, as well as to continue the work. And I know I have a few minutes, so so my name is Girly Adrian, and even with my first name being Girly, it stands out and it's very unique. And sometimes people don't take me seriously. I work in healthcare as a finance manager, and there are so many times when I walk into the room and they hear my name, the first thing is they think of me as the secretary. They don't think of me as the manager or any type of managerial role. And I always talk about proudly how much I love my name. My name is half my mom's name, half my dad's name. And so I think it's a very important symbolic about who I am. And both my parents are Haitian. They immigrated from Haiti, and I was born in Somerville, Massachusetts. And so I always talk about being proud of being Haitian American because and a lot of times, especially Black people, they don't like to talk about how proud they are. And for me, being Haitian American, being Black American is a part of my journey, about part of my story. And so I love to talk about that, talk about my name and talk about my heritage because it's a part of who I am. And for a long time, ever since I was 10 years old, I had a dream about running for office in the city of Everett. My parents, we moved to Everett when I was 3-4 years old, and they bought their first home in Everett. So I grew up in the city. But for so many years, I always felt like I was an outsider, like I didn't belong. The city was an Italian-Irish run city. And when I was 10 years old, I said, one day I'm going to run for office in Everett, and I'm going to change how we're having the conversation about Black and Latinos. And it's so sad, but I'm so proud. From 10 years old, and now I'm 30. So I ran when I was 29. From 10 years old to 29 years, to be that first Black woman and talk about that dream that I've had since I was 10 years. So it took 19 years, but it was so proud. And when I got inaugurated as the first Black woman, I did something that was different to make a statement to everybody in the city to know that Black and Latinos' lives really do matter. We filled up City Hall on inauguration night to the max, the hallways downstairs, the whole room was full with Black and Latino faces. And for me, it was like, we need to make a statement that we're here and you have to listen to us. And I was so happy that it was just so crowded. And for the mayor, for all the city councilors, the school committee members to see that, because I wanted to say, like, you haven't been listening to us for so many years. And now we have somebody in office, you're going to have to listen to us. And for the last 7 months, it has been a tough journey. There was a Boston Globe article that came out at the end of June, and it talks about how I stand alone. And when that article came out, I was really nervous because as a Black woman, I get if you guys ever decide to look on my Facebook, I talk about it as my journey, but I get harassed and negative to criticize on my Facebook all the time when I just want to focus on the work. I care about issues as education, opportunities, like when we look at hirings at city halls or even city contracts, or even just jobs or just affordable housing or the streets, the infrastructure, like economic development. I could talk about these issues all day. People in the city weren't focused on that. They were focused on my skin color, on my personality. They would call me this aggressive Black woman. And I never understood that because I always felt like I was just being who I was. I graduated from Bentley University with a degree in business management and accounting. I'm doing my MBA right now. My focus is healthcare and strategy from Boston University. And so for me, it was just never about education or anything like that. It was always about, well, I just want to talk about the work and what we're trying to do. But with the city of Everett, it was never like that. It would be like, get out of here, go back to Haiti. You don't belong here. You're not from us. And I'm like, I grew up in Everett. I just want to work on the issues that resonate with everybody. And so on the council, it would be tough trying to push issues and it would just be shut down. And it was just like, like, I just want to work for our future, for our children, for our people. Like, what do we do to make the city better? And when the Boston Globe article came out, I thought things were I was so surprised at the amount of support that I received across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Like, people were telling me the good work that I was trying to do, and I was really proud and support. Like, I remember when Congresswoman Ayanna, who's my congresswoman, she sent me a text that morning, and she said, "Girlie, I support you, and I want to be with you." And I was so thankful that so many people, like the District Attorney Rachel Rowlands, like everybody was reaching out, and I was just like, this is what we need to continue. We need people to see the type of work that Black politicians are going through and the impact that they're trying to make. And so I'm going to continue doing that work. And I still get comments, and I still get like the harassments and whatnot and the criticism, but I know that the work that I'm doing is really important. And I'm doing representation type of work. Like, there are so many Black little girls, Latino little girls who are looking up and saying, man, one day I could be like Girlie. And that's what I want. I want to see more faces like us in the fight for racial justice, to run for office. I'm always encouraging people to run. And it took me 3 times to finally win. And now look at the work and the statement that I'm doing. So I'm always encouraging people to stand up, to be that activist. I'm a community activist at heart. I talk to people all day. I love helping people. And I feel like we need more people like me in office. And so one of the areas that I want to challenge everybody who's watching, who's listening, participating, is reach out to your elected officials and let them know how you feel about issues. I always talk about this. Like, I'll notice on the council, we'll have traditional voters, people who vote all the time, will send emails, will send phone calls, send text messages about issues they care about. And then the counselors will listen to them. And then I'll have people who reach out to me about jobs, about housing, about education, and they don't listen to them. And I'm just like, huh? So now I'm like, I need you to reach out to everybody and talk to them about the issues that you care about. So even if there's a pothole or speeding, I need you to reach out to your counselor and CC me and let me know as well what I can do. But I want everybody to know what all the issues that are going on that's facing everybody in the city of Everett, because sadly right now, not everybody knows what's going on. And I'm so proud to see now that more people are reaching out to the mayor, to the counselors, to the school committee members. It could be about speeding, housing. It could be about food, jobs, every issue. And I'm so proud, because that's what I believe. I believe people should be at the forefront. And when we're trying to talk about equity for everybody. And so that's a little bit about my story. And I hope you support and join in Black politicians. And we have so many in Massachusetts who I call my friends. Like, my political mentor is Lydia Edwards out in Charlestown and East Boston, who I look up to and who I talk to a lot. And Nika Eldorado and Jamaica Plain, like, she's my political sister, Liz Miranda. And so just reach out for encouragement, because it's hard. There are days like my husband is just like, you want to do this, right? And I'm like, yeah, but it's hard. But I'm so proud that I'm in this fight and I love it. And I say that it's hard, but I'm going to continue and I'm not going to give up. I know they want me to leave. They want me to move, but I love this work. It is so important. Like, I see that being at the table, like, we used to hear that line as a cliche line, but I see it. Being at the table matters. For allowing me to speak. I don't know if I took too long, but if you want me to go longer, I can. But I just wanted to talk about my journey, and I truly am thankful that I can continue doing this, and I hope that I can continue doing this for a while, but I hope that we can get other people to join in on the fight at the table, because when I was an elected official, I was trying to fight for these issues and nobody was listening to me. Not one person. But now that I'm an elected official, it's like they actually listen. And it's sad, but they do listen. And I want us to continue to be at the table. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. You are thank you together for Girlie. I've got so many messages, Girlie. They say that you are. Yeah, everybody's been saying that you are amazing, Girlie. And let me tell you, like, the first time I've heard from you, it was on Boston Globe, when I was looking for somebody to come here in Acton, Boxborough to speak. And then when I saw your article, I was about to cry to see like how people are treating you, and especially as a woman. And so yeah, thank you for sharing that with us, and we'll continue the fight here in Acton and everywhere we go. And like you guys heard that Girlie is not originally from Haiti, but she was born in the U.S. I'm from Haiti, and that's the first time I see Girlie face to face. So yeah, thank you for what you're doing in Everett. Now to continue, we have after listening to two great speeches from two incredible, powerful women, we are now invited you to enjoy the Jazz for Justice Boston. Jazz for Justice Boston is a trio of Boston's finest jazz musicians. Pianist composer Kevin Harris is a professor at the Berklee College of Music. Bassist Keyala Kamahiwa and drummer Austin McMahon. Please join me in welcoming Jazz for Justice Boston. And maybe I should share that with you. And we are so thankful to Jazz for Jazz for Justice Boston, that they pre-recorded the music for us, because like it was about to, at least we'll still be able to enjoy their music. And let's welcome Jazz for Justice Boston again.
I'm not sure what's happening, but we might need to move on to the next person.
Difficulties. We will make sure that we play that for you later on. But we will continue with our next speaker. It is someone I admire, and I just met him maybe 2 months ago. It is Senator Jamie Eldridge. Jamie Eldridge has served as a state senator for the Middlesex and Worcester district since. Senator Eldridge currently serves as a Senate chair of the Joint Committee on Judiciary, the state vice chair of the Joint Committee on Election Laws, is a member of the Joint Committee on Children, Families, and Persons with Disabilities, and is known for his leadership on progressive issues. Please join me in welcoming Senator Eldridge. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Levinsky. So thank you so much for organizing this. Thank you for Leela, and wonderful turnout today. I'm sorry that we couldn't meet in person, but it's been a terrific program. City Councilor Girlie Adrian, who really is doing amazing work in Everett, and I've been following her career just over the past year. I'm just going to present on the legislative front about what the legislature has been doing in response to the murder of George Floyd and other Black residents across the country. And so I am going to hopefully do this correct and share PowerPoint presentation. Can people see the presentation? Can people see this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, wonderful. It's actually my first time doing a PowerPoint presentation on Zoom. So I wanted to just present on what the legislature has been doing, and the first item is the Senate Bill 2820, the Reform, Shift, and Build Act. So that deals with a number of items in response to the national protests. So the some of the goals are, let's see here. My apologies. To increase police oversight, shift the role around surveillance and move away from the punishment model, orient the role and direction of de-escalation and assistance away from police responses, and begin to address systemic racism. So the first major piece is the Police Accreditation Committee. So this is about decertifying police officers. And Massachusetts is only one of 4 states that does not have a state license for police officers. So when you think about most other professions, nurses, doctors, they all have a state license and a regulatory authority, but Massachusetts does not. And so this is legislation that's been proposed for a number of years, but really the protests around racial justice have really tipped the scales. So there will be a decertification committee that anyone can file a complaint. If that police officer is found to violate someone's civil rights or to act contrary to the law, that person would be decertified. And I think probably the most important piece of that is that police officer would no longer be able to practice to be a police officer in Massachusetts. So that's a really important piece. So the commission, and this was sort of a battle, again, this is just the Senate bill, but this is one of the battles that shows you some of the tension between police and racial justice advocates, is the makeup of the commission. And so the Senate bill has 6 law enforcement members and 8 non-law enforcement members. And this was a matter of debate in the Senate, just to give people a flavor for what's going on now, and why it's so important for you to reach out to your state rep and state senator to talk about what you would like to see in this final bill, because the Senate passed the bill, the House passed the bill, and now it's in conference committee. And at least in my opinion, you want to have a majority of this commission made up of non-law enforcement, so there's a little less bias in terms of complaints to police officers. School resource officers. This has been a big issue across Massachusetts. It's currently it's state law that every single school district must have a school resource officer. So in other words, a police officer or officers in our public schools. In my conversations with a number of Black residents in Acton and Boxborough, there have been, some commentary from some of the students, whether current students or alumni of color, that they felt that they were being treated differently by school resource officers. So this change would say that the decision is up to the school superintendent on an annual public vote by the school committee whether or not to allow school resource officers. School resource officers, I think, can have a positive impact and can have a positive interaction, and I've certainly heard of that. But I've also heard from Black students and youth that have concerns about this. That this would make this provision would make this a local issue. The next slide, it would mandate training for police officers around the history of systemic racism, as well as how to respond to mental health emergencies. So in other words, talking about de-escalation. When a police officer is called to someone's house because there's some, intense incident happening, making sure that the training, requires or has the police officer to focus on de-escalating the situation and not using a weapon. All police officers would also have to be trained about the historical legacy of racism in our country, I think that's really important, and again, has a focus on de-escalation. Use of force, and this is a real area where there was some disagreements and a whole number of votes in the Senate on use of force. So some of the provisions include, and these are pretty sort of dark and disturbing to think about, but it's important to think that we're really trying to pass major reform here, is the bill would say if a person is running away from a police officer or resisting arrest, the officer cannot use deadly force. So police officer pulls someone over, that person decides to run away for whatever reason, the police officer does not have the right to use deadly force if this bill were to become law. Right now, they can use deadly force. No-knock warrants. Anyone who's read recently about the tragic death of Yuri Stamps, a 68-year-old African-American man in Framingham that died after a drug raid by the Framingham police. That in part was that there was a no-knock drug raid on that house, even though Mr. Stamps was not a suspect. So this would require court approval and would prohibit no-knock warrants unless there's extreme reasons for that. And then creating a duty to intervene. So two police officers are interacting with a civilian. One police officer, gets into a violent altercation with that civilian. If that other officer believes that the officer could kill or seriously injure that person, that civilian, the other officer would have a duty to intervene. Think about what happened with the murder of George Floyd, where an officer just stood there and watched Mr. Floyd get suffocated. So this would require a duty to intervene for officers. And then around tear gas, it would require other actions by the police before police officers could use tear gas. We saw that a bit in Boston with some of the protests after George Floyd's murder. And then finally, chokeholds is that I made a push to completely ban chokeholds. I was unsuccessful. But what the bill says is that a chokehold can only be used by a police officer if the officer believes that he is at risk of being killed by the civilian. So that was a real issue of debate and disagreement that sort of shows the dynamic going on in the legislature now. Traffic stops. This was a big push by the Senate at the beginning of the session around the hands-free driving law. And so we have put similar language into the Senate bill that would say that anytime a police officer pulls someone over or stops someone, say on the street, they must be given a receipt or ticket that has all the details for why the person was pulled over, as well as the name of the officer. Just as an example, is in Boston, even though Black residents make up about 25% of the city's population, 70% of people who are stopped and frisked are Black residents. And so, there's an issue around racial profiling there. Unless we have the data to know what's happening in each of our communities, that's really going to be happening in any community. And so that would require that information. I think I talked about this a little bit before, but tear gas. So it would say that tear gas could not be used unless other options would have to be used. If those other options were not feasible, then tear gas could be used. I won't speak for the House of Representatives, but there was a big debate on this on the House about fully banning tear gas. That's what's in the Senate bill. So those are some of the details of the Senate bill, and would love to get feedback. I will say that we're hearing a lot more right now from conservatives and police officers than those who are supporting police reform or racial justice reform. So please be in touch with your state representative and state senator. And then I just wanted to conclude with two quick items. This is something that became law, so this has been acted on by the House and Senate, making Juneteenth holiday, which was a holiday created by enslaved people who were just freed after the Emancipation Proclamation in Texas, but still were not freed 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. So that is now a state holiday. So it's very, very pleased for that to be passed. And then the final one, which in some ways is sort of a bigger picture discussion, is the legislature passes bond bills all the time. What bond bill is borrowing money for different purposes. That can be for library construction, transportation, environmental bond bill. We have a general bond bill that we passed this session. And for those who follow criminal justice reform, even though Black and Latino Americans make up under 30% of the state's population, in our state's prisons, Black and Latino residents make up over 50% of the prison population. And this is something I see when I go out to MCI Shirley and Susan Baranowski prisons, which are in my district, and you see the disproportionate number of Black and Latino residents who are incarcerated. So we're making a push on criminal justice reform over the past few years, but prison reform advocates pushed and asked for me to file language which was successful to prohibit any new prison construction. So as we're seeing the prison population decrease, why would we build more prisons? That's just going to lead to further mass incarceration approaches. So we were successful in getting in that language to prohibit any new prison construction. Unfortunately, Governor Baker continues to try to build a new prison. It's actually a prison for female prisoners. So we're going to continue to push back on that. And then we also got into the bond bill automated sealing for CORI reform. So basically, CORI reform is on your criminal record once you get out of prison, and it's a real barrier to people going to college or getting a job. And so in this bond bill, we got language that automatically seals some of those criminal records. And then the last thing, talking about the discussion about shifting resources from the police to community reinvestment, and this isn't on the slide, but we reduced the spending for the state police to buy police cruisers, to buy police cars by $50 million, and we shifted that to a community reinvestment, justice reinvestment fund. So basically, would focus on communities that have been disproportionately impacted by mass incarceration and the war on drugs. Disproportionately neighborhoods of color, to job training, education, vocational training. It's a small step, but I think it's an important part of the conversation about moving away from spending money on new equipment for police and actually investing in programs that will address systemic racism in Massachusetts. So that's the presentation. And I really appreciate you listening and honored to be part of this program. Thank you, Levinsky, and it's great to be part of this discussion.
Thank you, Senator Jimmy.
Thank you.
For this nice presentation. And yeah, let's clap for Senator Jimmy. That was a really nice presentation. If you really want to know what you can do, go and Facebook page. We have a call to action on the police reform, and we provide some information and and numbers and emails that you can call and send an email to the representatives or the senators. So just check that out, and we'll be glad if you can do that. Yeah, thank you again, Senator Jeremy.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now our next, we will go back to try again to see if we can let you enjoy Jazz for Justice Boston. So, we're in the fight. We know that it's important for us to, have time for ourselves. And that's why you see on the Facebook group, we have a group of people that are focusing on, mental issues. They are helping us with that. And very soon we'll share more information about that with our Facebook group. So, and I think that music is one way to help you relax and, so we're trying to do that. And if you know anything about Black people at all, everything we do, we have music. We're crying like we make music out of our cries. So, like, as a Black person, everything I do, I want to put music in it. And if you know anything about me, you'll see that we'll always have young people part of what we do. We incorporate people from the high school, from the schools system. We have uh, Sadie, who's part of the high school, and then she's a member of the steering committee. So we really want to be okay. Yeah, we really want to include young people in whatever we do. Lila, are you ready? Can you please play for us Jazz for Justice Boston? There you go. Yeah, awesome. Thank you to David. For those pieces of music. We really enjoy it. Um, now we are moving with our next speaker, who is Representative Dan Sina. As a state representative for the 37th Middlesex District, Danilo, or Dan Sina, is the first Brazilian immigrant to be elected as a state legislature in America. Before his election, Dan served as Senator Eldridge District Director for 6 years, working to protect immigrant rights, ensure healthcare access, and make progress toward racial justice and climate justice. Now, Dan is continuing the fight on these issues and more in the Massachusetts House of Representatives. In the House, Dan is a member of the Massachusetts Black and Latino Legislative Caucus. Join me in welcoming Dan Sina.
Whoa!
Thank you, everyone.
You have a good place on the counter for it, Colin?
Basically, I appreciate you organizing this event and putting this together. Too bad we couldn't. So too bad we couldn't do this in person. But I also have some slides that I wanted to show you, and I can probably share here myself. But before I do that, I wanted to say that it's been an honor to be the first Brazilian American, I think, to be elected as state representative now for 2 months now. Everywhere I walk here in Acton, I get so many congratulations every time I'm walking with my children to the playground. So it has really kind of changed life a little bit in that perspective. But the work has been very difficult at the State House, given that we're very small numbers. For example, the Black and Latino individuals, we only have 14 of us. So a lot of the things that I would like to see done at the State House doesn't really seem possible in certain ways. And I relate very much with our city council there from, I think it was Everett, who spoke about that a little bit. But I wanted to talk about the police bill reform that we talked about. So let me see if I can pull it up here. Okay, good. I did it. Okay. Can everyone see the screen? Is it sharing? Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So as Senator Eldridge, explained after the murder um, we had to do something, and I'm glad that the House took, made a good police bill, and we had a lot of really not controversial, but very difficult, because this bill for itself, it passed with 93 votes, I believe. So let me look at what next slides. So what does the police reform bill does? These are some of the things. It creates Massachusetts, so basically brings standards to the police. And I think that's something very important, crucial for us to have. And that was one of the things that we discussed in the Black and Latino caucus, that it must be in the bill. Other was also usage of force, like Senator Eldridge explained. And for me, it was very straightforward. If a police officer violates someone's civil rights, that we are able to file a lawsuit against them. And I think that should be the law everywhere, anywhere in the world. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people who do not agree with that statement. So as you see, the bill passed was 93 against 66 in the House. Next, the thing that I would like to see included, even in the police reform bill, but was not possible, is the Work Family Mobility Act. And as you see, I think we in Massachusetts, we're still very behind on, we say we are for immigrants, we are a welcoming state for immigrants, but we're really not. The fact that we cannot provide them with a driver's license, I think it's a civil rights issue. I think anybody who resides in the state ought to be able to get a driver's license if they want to. Now, of course, if they pass the exam and do all the testings that someone is able to accomplish. But we are still requiring people to provide proof of, either lawful status. And that hurts the Black and Latino community, and I'm sure a lot of Asians as well. As you see, we have roughly around 200,000 undocumented immigrants in Massachusetts, at least some of these numbers here. And those are the things that I want to make sure we address. I hope before I'm no longer a state rep, that would be one of my goals. And the other slide is really something we talked about a couple weeks ago. We had a panel discussion here in Acton, it was via Zoom, where we talked about wealth inequality. And I think that's so important that we keep in mind, because if we don't have a income level that is fair in a way, which we clearly do not, when 1% controls 23% of the income or the economy here in Massachusetts as of 2016. And that is probably why we have greater incarceration of Blacks and Latinos. Because, if you don't have a certain wealth, you can't, it's very hard for you to have access to mental health issues, for example, healthcare, and everything. It's related. So, it's housing. So it's a problem that I would like to see us tackling a little bit at the State House in terms of housing as well. And also maybe passing the millionaire's tax. And I think that's something where we are asking those who make more to pay a little more, and then use those funds for education. For example, universal pre-K, that's something I would like to see it done at the state level as well. And I think we can afford it. It's really just asking the people who make $1 million or more a year in income tax to be able to pay a little bit more. With that, I would love to take some questions at the end. I know I have 5 minutes to speak, so I don't want to take too long, but I really appreciate everyone's coming in to watch these panels. So I thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, let's put our hands together for Dan. Thank you, Dan, for what you've been doing in Acton, Boxborough, and thank you for what you're doing in this state representative. So your story is very inspiring, and especially for me, who's an immigrant, and for a lot of other immigrants. So knowing that you came here, without speaking English, and now maybe in less, is it 10 years or so, now you are a state representative. So it's inspiring. So I believe we can do that too. So keep doing what you're doing. And so we thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Moving on, I think now we have our next song. Our next song will be performed by Laura Griel J, vocalist, composer, and arranger. Laura Gil J performs many styles of music from jazz to folk and more. She teaches at Meridian's Academy in Jamaica Plain and at MIT, leading the MIT Vocal Jazz Ensemble. She will perform Duke Ellington come Sunday. Please join me in welcoming Laura Griel J.
That's kind of what I think.
Thank you.
Is she on here?
God Almighty, God of love, please look down and see my people through. Lord, dear Lord above, God Almighty, God of love, ooh, please look down and see my people, see 'em through. I believe that God put the sun and the moon up in the sky, and I don't mind the gray skies, 'cause they're just clouds passing by. Ooh, Lord, He'll give peace and comfort to every troubled mind. Come Sunday, oh, come Sunday, that's the day. I believe that God put the sun and the moon up skies. I don't mind them 'cause they're just clouds passing by. La, dee, la, above. God Almighty, God of love, please look down and see my people through.
Upper left there.
You have an incredible, Laura, you have an incredible voice. Thank you for performing this song for us. This is always my prayer for God Almighty to look down on us, and especially as a suffered group. I'm a minister preaching and talking about that, not just praying, but that's why I decided not just simply, to talk at a church or with just a small group, but I decided to, go on the street to protest and meet people that we believe should listen to us and take actions. And I'm telling you, this song it talks to me. Yeah, thank you for singing that song. Once again, let's put our hands together for Laura.
Hey. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you to Duke Ellington for knowing how to put those feelings into words. Thank you.
With our next speaker. Our next speaker is Temi Govea. Representative Temi Govea she's the state representative of the 14th Middlesex District. Temi Govea was elected to the Massachusetts House of Representatives in 2019. She brings her expertise in public health, social work, and to her work on the Children, Families, and Persons with Disabilities Committee and the Committee on Mental Health, Substance Use, and Recovery. As a progressive, Temi is committed to advocating for the things that everyone needs to thrive: humane housing, opportunities for lifelong learning, a sustainable income, reliable transportation, healthcare, and safe places to enjoy the environment. Please join me in welcoming Representative Temi Govea.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for that introduction, Levinsky. Great to be here. Thank you for the music. I know that we're nearing the 7 o'clock hour, and I know folks also want to be able to ask questions. So I will give some very brief remarks about the interrelationship between systemic racism, historical racism, and public health. I have been in the field of public health for about 20 years. I grew up in the city of Lowell, Mass. And while growing up in Lowell, I observed a lot of environmental degradation, a lot of challenges with safe housing, and a lot of folks in my community at the time who also did not have a sustainable source of income. And all of these things really interrelate with systemic racism and xenophobia. So while I was living in Lowell, I focused on environmental health and environmental justice. And that's how I entered into the field of public health and social work, is really through my work starting in 1995 around environmental justice, really focusing a lot on lead poisoning and the exposures in the Southeast Asian population in the city of Lowell as it relates to dilapidated old housing stock in the city. And one of the things that I've learned both in that experience, but also in the course of my career, is how much all of the social determinants of health really impact our well-being on a day-to-day basis. And we talk a lot about in the field of public health about how it's not only about the particular focus of policies to try to create equitable health and well-being, but it's also what are the outcomes of those policies. And oftentimes there is a disconnect between those two. And so when I came into the State House, I did two things focused on equitable health and well-being. The first is I filed a piece of legislation that would direct the secretariats under the governor to have a statement and plans around equitable health and well-being. So whether you're the Secretary of Transportation or the Secretary of Economic Development or the Secretary of Housing, you would have responsibility for making sure that the plans and policies that you're putting in place under your purview would trickle down and support equitable health and well-being. And when I say equitable health and well-being, I'm including in that measures around mental health, behavioral health, and making sure that we're taking care of our physical health as well as those other aspects of health also. What we see here in this country and in this state is we don't have Medicare for all. We don't have a single payer healthcare system. So we have a very bifurcated system where, you know, if you have a physical illness, you go to one doctor. If you have something going on with mental health or substance use, you may or may not get referred by your doctor to appropriate treatment. And so that's why I'm the co-chair with Senator Eldridge on the Medicare for All caucus up at the State House, just knowing how much the system of how we pay for disease care in the state really does impact our health and well-being. And one of the things that's really important to just sort of note here is that there is a real difference between thinking about health and healthcare and public health. And public health is squarely focused on making sure that we are preventing disease and disability. And so public health is safe and humane housing. When I think about and reflect on policies from the 1940s that were, you know, redlined communities and segregated our communities, that we can see the repercussions of that, you know, almost 60 years later, where we have inequities in our education system, we have inequities in our housing system, and just taking a look at what's happening in COVID, we can see, and we know that our communities of color, people of color, are dying at 2 to 3 times the rate from COVID as their white counterparts. And a lot of that has to do not only with healthcare access, but it also has to do with the kinds of housing that people are living in, the kinds of jobs that they are, able to get, and the kind of educational opportunities that they've had in their past. I'm a doctoral student right now. I'm focused on opioid policies. I've done an analysis of almost 200 years of drug policy making in our country. And, you know, just thinking about some of the comments that Senator Eldridge made and that Rep. Sena made about income inequality and mass incarceration as it relates to police reform, taking a look at our policies around the drug war and all the punitive policies. We've made great strides in our state around addressing mandatory minimum sentencing and other issues related to the war on drugs, but there's still a lot more that we can be and ought to be doing because we really have a history of racializing and criminalizing a health issue. And for me, I'll just sort of end on this. It all boils down to so much of our policy making in the state could be more focused on humane, what I call compassionate policy making, and really making sure that we are putting people at the center and equitable health and well-being at the center of every single policy that we are taking up. When I was running for office in 2018, I would have, voters ask me, well, why are you leaving public health to go into policy? And I said, no, policy making, the State House just happens to be where I do my public health work. And my public health work has really been focused on equitable health and well-being, as I said, going all the way back to, 1995. And, we have great partners here in Dan and Jamie in trying to, really focus on all the aspects of policies that impact our communities of color and our low-income communities in the state. We fare very well here, but we know that we have a long way to go to addressing the inequities in our system. So I appreciate, just being here for a few minutes just to share some of my thoughts about the intersections between racism and public health, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Yay!
Thank you so much, Tam. It's important that we understand how significantly racism impacts health. Next, I'm excited to introduce Levinsky Jasmine. Originally from Haiti, Levinsky has a bachelor's degree in international relations and a master's of divinity. He's also an organizer, activist, and a fantastic leader. He is determined to fight white supremacy and inequality based on race. So let's welcome Levinsky back.
International relations now.
Woo-hoo! Oh, thank you. And thank you, Lila, for the hopefully I will not be stressed now. Okay, I will be speaking on America's New Awakening. No one predicted it, but it suddenly begins by tearing every heart apart, followed by a wave of contagious anger to stand for and with a long-suffered group that never ceased to be regarded as the son of darkness. America's New Awakening has shaken and scattered the trapopause of the systemic racism that constitutes a threat leading to eradicate the black race from the face of the earth. Although we focus on our country, Black people have never been treated equally to any other race in the entire world. As a leading figure of an imposing democracy, the world has been turning to us for many reasons. And this time, after numerous violent cases to which parents and families are yet to get justice, and most recently after the atrocious and unacceptable murder of George Floyd, our citizens are demanding justice, and the rest of the world is observing and waiting to see what our response will be as a country. Everyone was afraid of the pandemic, trying to navigate through it, following the guideline of the scientists, and of course, our president who downplayed everything since the beginning, causing the death of thousands. And you know it, according to the Commonwealth Fund in Chicago, African Americans make up 30% of the population, but 68% COVID-19 deaths. Similar trends exist in Milwaukee, Michigan, New Orleans, and other locations. Although families were suffering bitterly the death of their loved ones, the senseless murder of George Floyd and the last of the series has created a collective reckoning, testifying the fact that racism is considered deadlier than the pandemic and has a bigger impact on Black people. America came out of its shell. Everyone noticed the outrage and anguish all around the country was the expression of different ethnic groups standing in one accord, telling us what America looks like. The street was a token of God's kingdom assembled here on earth. In 1669, Virginia passed a law that the death of an enslaved person while resisting the master is not a felony. This may not be applicable as it was written, but the spirit of that law is still there. You may have heard of the incident that happened in Indianapolis where Sean Weird was fatally shot. An Indianapolis detective was caught on camera saying, "I think it's going to be a closed casket, homie." This detective got suspended and reassigned to his position. This is a conspiracy. The cover-up will remain because they are homies. And if we don't unrelentingly stay awake, This will happen again and again and again. Today, we declare that systemic racism, injustice, and conspiracy have got to stumble, and America, for the first time in history, must become one. We will not be swayed by outer and inner conspirators that are working to shift our ultimate goal, that is, our demand for justice, to end violence and the war against Black people. We have been kidnapped, stripped away from our past, culture, language, and even our humanity. As George Orwell said, whoever controls the past controls the future. We are not up to let our humanity be stolen anymore. You have been controlling our past, present, and future. Now is the time for us to control our present, future, until the past becomes our own. I'll leave you with a quote from one of my ancestors that assures us that we will overcome. His name is General Toussaint Louverture. If you speak French, General Toussaint Louverture. He said, by knocking me down, they have only felled the trunk of the tree of the freedom of Black people. Branches will sprout, for the roots are numerous and deep. We will overcome. May God bless you, and may God bless America. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Levinsky.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And yeah, thank you everyone for participating in that today. And we have spent a great time together. Now again is the time to listen to some music before we move on to the questions. After you have heard from Levinsky and Representative Tammy, I am beyond excited to present you two talented sisters. Artists, Trisha and Tara Iyer. Since moving to Bugsboro just last year, Trisha and Tara Iyer have become local sensations. Their YouTube channel featuring their own original music and some cover songs is growing fast in popularity. Trisha is a student at AB High School, and Tara is entering the R.J. Gray Junior High School this fall. They are both actively involved in school choir and musical. Fran Weber is their private music teacher. Please, let's welcome Trisha and Tara, the Iyer sister.
Oh.
Hello, we're the Iyer sisters. This is Trisha. She's 14 years old, and I'm Thara. I'm 12 years old, and today we're going to be singing an original, and it's called Try Again. I don't wanna be here right now. Parts of the tower came crumbling down. Outside, everything is falling apart. Inside, my heart is aching now. Won't cry here, no. I won't, not today. 'Cause I gotta say, So try again, try again, try again. Ooh. So try again, try again, try again. Ooh. I'm trying to figure out how to deal with it right now. I'm still hearing a crumbling sound. Outside, everything is tumbling, and inside, I can't describe it. Tears rushed down my face, but I wiped it away. 'Cause I have to say, if you fall down, then you've gotta pick yourself up off the ground. If you fall down, then you've gotta pick yourself up off the ground. So try again, try again, try again. Ooh. So try again, try again, try again.
Yeah, thank you, both of you.
So thank you for giving us this opportunity to perform in front of all of you. And like everyone has been saying, let's all rise together to support racial justice. So the next song we're performing is Rise Up by Andrea Day. Broken down and tired of living life on a merry-go-round. You can't find the fighter, but a seed in you, so we gon' walk it out and move mountains. We gon' walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise up high like the waves. I'll rise up in spite of the ache. I'll rise up and I'll do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up high like the waves. I'll rise up in spite of the ache. I'll rise up and I'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you, for you. When the silence isn't quiet and it feels like it's getting harder to breathe, and I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet and move mountains, take the world to its feet and move mountains. And I'll rise up right like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up and I'll do it 1,000 times again. rise up. High like the waves, I'll rise up. In spite of the ache, I'll rise up. And I'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you, for you. All we need is hope that we have each other, that we have each other. Yeah. We will rise, we will rise, we will rise. We will rise. And I'll rise up, high like the waves, I'll rise up. Yeah, in spite of the ache, I will rise 1,000 times again. And we'll rise up, high like the waves, we'll rise up. In spite of the ache, we'll rise up. And we'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for
I just want to let you guys know that people, and you have a wonderful voice, and thank you for performing for us today. And yeah, we believe that we will rise up, and this is a great way to end this evening. And before we pass to the questions, thank you to your families, your mom and dad who accepted you guys to perform for us today. And yeah, we can't thank you enough. Now it's time to get some questions. And thank you to all of the speakers and musicians and everyone. We will pass to the questions. But unfortunately, we can't really take too many questions because we wanted to finish at 7. It's already 7:21, so we don't want to take to stay longer. So we'll take maybe two questions. Lila, do you have any questions, or like you do? If anyone wants to ask questions and you are on Zoom, please raise your hand and we will unmute you and let you ask your questions. So we'll take at least 2 or 3 questions, no more than that. Okay. Any questions? No. Okay. Do we have any questions from the chat? Okay, seems like there's no question. Everybody wants to go home, or I don't know.
There was one in the chat from earlier.
Okay, good. Yeah, go
Someone
ahead.
asked if I think some of the legislators could talk more about the qualified immunity debate, because I think a couple of people mentioned that it was not necessarily easy to pass through. So if anyone would like to add anything to that.
I can certainly add.
Well, the senator is here. Okay, good.
Hi, everybody. Senator Eldridge. Yeah, so the The Senate and House language was different, but the Senate language changed the qualified immunity standard to say that if a reasonable person believed that a police officer was not violating someone's civil rights or breaking the law, they would continue to get qualified immunity and therefore could not be sued personally for their actions. But if a reasonable person did not believe that a police officer was acting reasonably, then say someone who was beaten up by a police officer or the family members of someone who was killed or other examples could sue in court. And while that would mean that if a police officer was found guilty, he or she would have to pay damages. In most cases, the government, usually the city or town, would pay the damages. But basically, it's a way to create an access for people that feel that they were injured or hurt or their rights were violated by the police to go to court. The Senate language does not eliminate qualified immunity, but it reforms it. And I do have some descriptions of that on my website, senatoreldridge.com. The House language is different, but the Senate language, that's what the Senate language did. And it does seem like that is one provision that police officers are really pushing back against. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Jeremy. Any more questions? Okay, if there's no more question, maybe I can. All right, go ahead.
Loving Sky, I believe there is a question from call-in user 1. I'm just going to unmute them, and maybe we can hear their question.
All right.
Here we go. Don't seem to be able to unmute them right now. I can tell that their hand's raised, though, so...
All right, maybe I need to figure out who's that. Yeah, do you know who's that?
It just says call in user 1. That's their ID right now.
Okay. Unmute. Okay. That person doesn't. Oh, it's an audio. Whoever is on the audio line, you have your hand raised. Please, if you want to ask your question, it's time for it. You have maybe 1 minute for your question.
I think the issue is that I can't unmute them.
Okay.
I'm clicking the unmute, but do you have that ability?
No, I try to unmute it.
I can't do it either.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I was gonna ask maybe Girly, if you're still here and listening, share your experience at the town of Everett. Growing up, maybe your school, how was that? And then before you become an elected official. Nice. Seems like Girly's not here.
Nope, I can't.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, okay, now you guys can hear me. I'm sorry. I was trying to mute myself. Sorry, could you say the question again?
Yeah, I know you grew up in, I don't know, somewhere in Everett. And as a Black person, you have a different experience at the school system growing up, and would like you to probably share something about your experience growing up in Everett. And especially, as a Black person, and I have a testimony from somebody who is, from both two different parents.
Yeah.
And then, that person has two different experience, because when they find out that her mother was a white person, they treat her completely different. So I think it's probably the same for you, growing up, knowing that your mom is from Haiti, and but you are American, born in U.S. Maybe your experience maybe similar to that.
Yeah, so growing up in Everett, a Haitian household, they did not want me to go to the public school system. So I actually did not go to the public school system in Everett. I went to Catholic school in Somerville. And my parents felt like they couldn't trust the public school system in Everett to put their Black child in there and make sure they had a good education. So for my parents, they were really aware of being Black, and especially being in Everett as the only one on the block who was Black. And so when I was in school in Somerville, there were a few other Black people as well, Haitians, right, Jamaicans, Cape Verdeans in the class. And so I just know that it was interesting. Like when I would go to school, I played basketball for a long time. When I would go to the YMCA, the Boys and Girls Club, it was like a whole different world. And then when I would go back home to Everett, I remember us getting, like the police would come to our house all the time because the neighbors weren't comfortable with us in the neighborhood. So it would be two different worlds for us. And to see how much Everett has been so diverse now, like Everett, I think, is the second city of diversity in the Commonwealth. It wasn't like that before. And we would be nervous to walk down the street. Like my parents, they wouldn't even let me go outside and play because they were just like, oh, somebody's going to call the police and something's going to happen. And I remember when there was a bike stolen in the neighborhood and they accused my brothers, and the police came in, knocked on the door, searched the whole house for the bicycle. And the bicycle wasn't in our house, but I just always remember that experience. And I know the Everett police always feels like I'm tough on them now, but it's because I just remember those type of experiences. I understand how so many families feel like that in Everett now, and I want to change that feeling. And it's sad that things still hasn't changed, because I was like 6 years old and I'm 31 now, and people are still feeling like the police is it's interesting. But I do love Everett. Everett is my home. I love the city. I will always promote it to everybody. I just think we just got to fight some barriers and continue that fight.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure if Tammy is here. I have a question for her. Is there any question in the public? Because I don't want to keep that for myself. No? All right. Yeah, I have a question for Tammy. We've heard, thank you for sharing your experience and what you've been doing as a state rep. About the discussion on racism as a public health crisis. Would you, walk us a little bit through that so people can know why, or maybe I can learn something from it, why we should consider racism as a public health crisis? No, okay.
She's not here.
Okay, she's not here. Okay. All right, then. Thank you, everyone. And there's no more questions. We have to stop. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time and your dedication to fight with us and for us. We know it's hard and to see people suffering. And we're Black people. We have been suffering for many years. And I think now is the time for everybody to stand together to change America, make America a safe place for everyone, regardless of your color, your origin, and everything. Thank you to the speakers and musicians and the Irish sisters. Everybody loves you. And yeah, I am a musical person. I can listen to you all day long. Yeah, thank you for using your voice to, fight against injustice, discrimination, and everything. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the steering committee. I can't really call all of your names, but thank you to all of you. Thank you to the communication team. Lila, you are the only one. I'll have to put you on spot. And thank you to Fred. Hey, Fred, I can't thank you enough. You joined us. I met you about 2 months ago, and at the protests. Man, we became brothers. It's like we've been working together for 20 years. And yeah, thank you so much for helping us putting that event together. Thank you also to the research and policy group. You guys have been killing it. Thank you to the design team. Everybody loves your design. We'll continue to work together. Thank you to David and Comrade, and for accepting to join our team. So we want to show people in the community that we can work together. We can do something together. And we're here to change the community for the better. And if you have time, please check out our Facebook page, and let's continue the conversation. And then we have few opening spot. If you want to join the communication team, you will be welcome to be part of what we're doing. And I want you to know that we are advocating for Black people, but we are focused on Black and brown people or anybody who is suffering in the community, because we want the community to be better for all of us, not for just one Black people, but for all of us. And yeah, goodbye, everyone, and thank you for your time, and see you another time.
Thank
Bye.
you.
And love you all. God bless you.